Entrepreneur MBA podcast purpose is to help existing business owners grow their companies past the 10 million in revenue per year benchmark. Here is your host, Stephen Halasnick.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Stephen Halasnick, and I'm co-founder of Financing Solutions. Over the last 25 years, I've built 6 companies in the $5 million to $25 million range. And I can't tell you how important it is for businesses to have a line of credit so they can make an investment in their business or even for unexpected emergencies. I can't tell you how many times over those 25 plus years that I've had to use my line of credit. I always made sure I had it in place. When I got caught once without having it, it freaks you out when you don't have cash on hand to make payroll or do something. And I tend to be somebody who's prepared. And because of that, me and my business partner, we own Financing Solutions. We really thought there was a better way than to deal with traditional banks. Traditional banks are just rough to deal with. And so what we did was we developed a line of credit program that's easy for businesses to get in place. It's inexpensive when used, and it costs nothing to set up, making it a great cash backup plan for your business. If you'd like to learn more about our line of credit program, please visit us at fscreditline.com. That's FS as in Financing Solutions, creditline.com, or give us a call at 862-207-4118. If you apply today, we will even give you a $250 credit on file. Just remember, hold on. Okay, sorry guys. So there was just a technical issue. I don't know what happened. If you apply today, we'll even give you a $250 credit on file. Just remember, the time to set up a line of credit is when you don't need it, so that when you do need it, it is ready to go. Today, I am very excited to be speaking with Kyle Widrick from Win Brands Group. Kyle is the co-founder and CEO of Win Brands Group, a e-commerce holding company that buys and builds category-defining brands. Win's enviable stable of brands includes Homesick, which is scented candles and home fragrances, Kalo, which is silicone wedding rings and accessories, and Gravity, the original weight blanket. Through Win, Kyle is focused on leveraging best-in-class technology partners to scale the most innovative customer-first brands in the world. He has spent nearly a decade honing the art of consumer-focused venture capital and brand building, raising millions of dollars and building businesses, responsible for employing hundreds of people in the process. His background includes working side by side with billionaire serial entrepreneur and branding guru J. Christopher Birch, as well as founding multiple best-in-class investments and marketing operations in the U.S. and abroad. Kyle, welcome to today's Entrepreneur MBA podcast.
Stephen, thank you so much. Great to be here.
So today's topic, and I get excited when the topics, which are usually my guests suggest them and I tweak them, but I get excited when they talk about real world growth or real world experiences of building a company. I don't get a lot of them. I could get every single podcast to be that way, and I don't think that's really great. But I haven't had one like this in a while where we talk about your growth as a company, because I think you learn a lot from experiences than you do from, a consultant talking about, what they're reading about or whatever, stuff like that. Not that we get that, but today's topic is titled "My Entrepreneurial Journey to Founding Win, a 9-figure in revenue company." And so, let's dive into the really early phases of Win. When you first started your business, what was the vision that you kind of had?
Sure. So, relevant as a lead-in, prior to Win Brands, I had co-founded an agency called BVA Commerce, back then called BV Excel. And we were one of the first Shopify-focused e-commerce partner agencies. So building websites and doing paid marketing for groups like Kylie Cosmetics, MVMT Watches, etc. And we built that business up over a period of 5 years. We ended up selling it to a private equity group. And the focus for Win Brands Group was, rather than doing just website creation and paid marketing, could we not create a holding company and a shared team that would do everything that you need to run these businesses, to do the customer service and the product sourcing, everything, And so that's how it started. And we've been at it now for, several years.
Yeah, when I read your bio even before I got on air, when you're an experienced business person or experienced entrepreneur, let's say, and I'm not, but just so you know, I hate the word entrepreneur. I hate it. I think it's just so. It says it's like this. Oh, I'm an entrepreneur. It's just probably should just say I'm a business owner, but I when you're an experienced business owner and you see other business owners, you can kind of smell and ferret out those who have made it and those who haven't, who are still trying to make it, right? And, and when I read through your stuff, it's a lot less, it's more strategic. It's a lot less working really in the business versus working on the business. And that's really where everybody wants to get to, isn't it?
Sure. So this is my third startup, let's say. So I've been a entrepreneur, as you say, for a while. The first one was really tough, more of a hustle of sorts that we ended up selling. The second one was a grind. I think we timed the market well. This one is very strategic, set up for purpose and really set out to be a game changing platform for the ecosystem. And I think, part of the perspective, and I lean a lot on perspective. To your point, I think that matters as far as what you've seen. I was really lucky to work for an entrepreneur for almost 7 years who was a self-made billionaire, had several businesses and investments himself. So I got to see a lot of that. I got to see businesses that, on paper looked really good, but the fundamentals weren't there. I did get to see some amazing success stories and then a lot of failures. So I had great perspective from that leading into these last two ventures. And with Win, what I really focus my time on is meeting with entrepreneurs. And a lot of times it's their first business and they've scaled it to some success. That could be 5, 10, 15 million of revenue. And I try to give them my counsel on how I see the world. And maybe, it could be a good fit for them to partner with Win Brands and maybe not. But I think everyone has to go through that journey, themselves.
Yeah, the reason why, and I don't mention this very often in the intro, it says when the music comes on, $10 million, is because one of the things I learned is when your company reaches $10 million, and honestly, it depends on the market you're in, right? What you're doing,
Sure.
you are then able to sell the business. Where you're at a reasonable multiple. Right. So like I found that the magic number of the industries I was getting involved in, well, at least a couple of them were $10 million. That's when people start to say, oh, whoa, you got something sellable here. Right.
Sure.
And, I think when you first start, you're thinking, oh, I want to grow this to 50 million, 100 million. You don't realize that that's starting, you're starting to get into VC money, angel money, all this other thing. The businesses that Win are going after, are they in a certain vertical?
So they are. So we kind of look at the world through the lens of entrepreneurs that are creating product-led businesses, which is what we focus on. 0 to 5 million is kind of that first bucket. 5 to 25 would be the second phase, and then 25 to, let's say, 100 million would be the third phase. So typically, we're finding businesses between that 5 and 25 in phase two. They've had some success. They had a product that really worked. That's allowed them to separate from the pack and show proof of concept as we look at it. But they run into challenges. It's a very different operation running a business at a scale of 20 million per year of revenue versus 5. And it's very different running it at 50 versus 20, right? So I think all of these require different skill sets. Sometimes the entrepreneurs are able to transition and continue to build. I was fortunate to partner and see many of those at my former agency, BVA Commerce. Take an example, the MVMT founders, Jake and Kramer, they started their business at the same time we started the agency, and they were able to scale to that third bucket, getting close to that 100 million of revenue. But that was rare. I mean, we saw a lot of founders who had great products and great concepts, but they were not able to scale to the same extent. And honestly, that was the inspiration in starting Win Brands Group. Could we bring in a team that would allow these founders to take that product to the next level with our support?
Now, I assume that what you have is you have either angel funding or VC group that is backing you up when you find something of interest.
That's right. So I started out with, let's say, insider kind of high net worth friends and family, given my background coming from the family office world. We did a few rounds there, and then we just announced at the top of this year a institutional funding round led by a group called Orangewood Partners. So we've now raised tens of millions of dollars, and that capital gets used by us to continue building that incredible shared team that we have, and then going out and partnering with these founders. So most of that goes towards M&A to buy more brands.
Was it hard? Was it hard for you to learn? Well, hard is a relatively a challenging word to define, but was it hard for you to learn how to uh, know about evaluations, venture capital? How it all works. Was it hard?
Super tough. I mean, I started out like strictly valuations. My first job out of college was working in transactions. So I did M&A transaction work.
Ah,
That's kind of my background, finance and accounting. I then landed at this family office. And, when you think about something like a golf game, right? People talk to me about muscle memory in golf, of which I have none. I'm a terrible golfer. I worked for this guy for so long doing investments that I built up some muscle memory around like what a good deal looks like, what a bad deal looks like. And, as far as raising capital, it really comes down to the industry, right? And we've seen, even since founding Win a few years ago, the interest level from venture in consumer product led businesses has gone up and down and sideways, right? So you want to be on a wave that's going in the right direction and has a lot of momentum. I think right now, fortunately for us, the consolidation and kind of the holding company model within e-commerce is in a very good view with investors. A few years ago, let's say 3, 4 years ago, the view was much more single asset driven, right? So those things shift over time. And for us, when we ultimately selected, Orangewood Partners to help us continue to scale, it was really about the people, finding great partners who you want to be in the room with and you want to grow with. And they're more private equity than venture, but we've also spoken with a lot of different venture groups. Some have invested in groups that we've looked at as far as brands, and some are looking at the holding company model for their own kind of future investment thesis.
so I usually these shows are more about my guests than me, but I'll tell you, if for our listeners and for Kyle too, if you had asked me 20 years ago, the number one business I probably would not go into, it was finance, because I'm not very good at understanding numbers. So I like the space because the thing with finance, and I own two companies in finance. I like the space because the product never goes out of vogue, right? There's always a need for financing, and it just so happens that I found a partner who's great at it, and I complement that skill in a different way. So, every time you look at, say, oh, I'm not going to go in that industry, there's sometimes is a way. So now, when you look at the three businesses that you own right now, do they play off each other at all?
So they do, in the sense that we've built up our infrastructure to have this shared team. The shared team operates similar to an agency, which was my previous business. So we have a head of 14 different verticals. One's customer service, one's product sourcing, one is finance, one is legal. So all of this feeds into the brands.
Oh,
So we've built the mothership, call it, to really be agnostic to the category, to the brand. And then what that allows the brands to do is really focus on product innovation, community building, everything that made them special to start. they can get back to rather than getting bogged down in all the operations. So we're in two vertical categories today. One is home and gifting. The other is sport and outdoor. As you mentioned, we have the Homesick, scented candle business in home. We also have the Gravity original weighted blanket business in the health and wellness space. On the sports side, we have Kayla that you mentioned, and we actually also just announced an acquisition of a company called Love Your Melon. And Love Your Melon's a leader in outerwear and hats. They've been a tremendous story, huge give back to pediatric cancer. Really tremendous founders there that we met, got to know, and came to the conclusion collectively that their brand would fit really well within our model.
Yeah, so let me test my understanding here. What you did is you took all the operation part of running a consumer brands company, the legal, the accounting, and you have that as a shared services across all the companies, and allowing the companies to focus on what they really love to do, which is, building consumer brands, selling brands. Is that accurate?
That's exactly right. Most of these founders that I meet, they're frustrated that they're spending 90% of their time worried about the 3PL, worried about product sourcing, the shipping, the returns, things that can be handled from a shared team. They want to get back to being creative about the business and about the products. The only thing I would add to what you said, which is very accurate, is we also run all the revenue channels. So we have an e-commerce vertical team. We have an Amazon vertical team. We have a wholesale team. Our brands are now sold nationwide in Walmart and Target and Dick's Sporting Goods and Bloomingdale's. Amazon has been a big driver for us. So we're truly omni-channel, with Shopify being our first focus, but then a really aggressive second focus on Amazon and growing that business, and then wholesale retail.
So it's not a unique model though. I mean, I don't know. I'm not in that space, but I would assume having shared services for across the board for multiple consumer products companies, say in this case, is not a new idea. Is that correct?
It's relatively new.
Is it really? Wow.
Being done this way. I mean, this is, if we were trying to be ambitious, we could say this is kind of the P&G model for the future of e-commerce, meaning a big holding company with several different brands with some shared infrastructure. We've seen a little bit more of it on the Amazon side, actually, as far as holding companies and kind of shared service. We are one of, and currently the leader on the Shopify side. We believe that the brand itself actually matters a lot, and having a branded product story to get behind helps us grow on Amazon and at wholesale retail. But it's a pretty unique model. I think it makes a lot of sense. People thought I was crazy 4 years ago when I started this. They said, well, why don't you just focus on launching a brand? And my idea, or my intent here, my thesis was always, the great brands will be there, and there'll be some unicorn brands, let's say Allbirds, that go out on their own unilaterally. But there are so many brands that have great products and great business potential that get hamstrung by the operations. So can we not build this great operating team, then go out and plug in some of these brands and scale together?
I'm perplexed that people would say it's not a good idea. I mean, it just makes complete sense to me. That's why I said to you, this can't be a new model. It's got to be, it's so obvious that this is needed.
I think so. Listen, I think we're still dealing with a nascent category of e-commerce. This is kind of 10 years in. The phase one was the Bonobos. The phase two was the Casper. I think this is really phase three of e-commerce, where efficiency does matter. Having a shared team that you can leverage does matter. It's certainly not getting any easier out there on any of these channels. You need a large team to make this work. And that's often the conversation that I have with founders that I meet. And they're at the crossroads. They're doing 25 million of revenue. They have a team of 25 people. They have to scale that team to be 50, 60, 75 people if they want to truly be omni-channel. They can do that on their own, and they can raise capital or invest their own capital to do that, or they can partner with someone like us. And that just becomes a personal decision that has positives and negatives.
The owners who you approach about this idea, who say no, why do they say no?
Yeah, it's usually pretty fast now in those cases. And the simple answer is they think, they believe rather, that they have a lot more growth left unilaterally on their own. So they want to keep scaling it. And that's a conversation that I love to have, and I'm a supporter of theirs. And they, if they want to continue to scale the business for 2 or 5 or 10 years, I'm the last person that's going to try to steer someone to our model. For other folks who have seen some growth and some significant scale, but are looking for additional resources, we become a really good fit. So, for every 100 conversation, we end up selecting, let's say, one company that we're interested in, and some of those founders are ready to partner with us, and some of them aren't.
Yeah, what percentage of the time? What do you think the deal flow is like? So if you make five, you know what? I'm not going to go there because I think it's kind of private information. So we'll talk about it. Um, how 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 had you decided what industries to focus in on? Where was that original decision?
So it kind of just fell in our lap, to be honest, in the sense that Homesick was our first acquisition. And Homesick came to us actually as an owned and operated business within BuzzFeed. And I had known a guy, Ben Kaufman, who was the original founder of Homesick. He had joined BuzzFeed, and Homesick had gone with him to BuzzFeed. And we were having lunch and discussed the topic of what I was doing. And he said, look, I got this business, Homesick, that's an absolute home run, that I think maybe you would be able to do more with it than what's happening at BuzzFeed. We quickly squared that up. We got a deal done. This was way back in April of 2018. And that was a business, thinking about the concept itself. It is a fragrance and a candle company, but it's built on the back of nostalgia. So Homesick is candles based around states and cities and memories. So it's really a candle that takes you back to a time and a place. It's all about that sense of nostalgia. So we got really excited about the opportunity of selling a scent-based brand online via that nostalgia. That was the first kind of push as far as what folks were looking to buy. So got that deal done. That took us in the home category. We then got a deal done with Kalo. Met the founders of Kalo. Had been at it for roughly 10 years. These are ex-restaurant industry folks who came up with a great concept for this silicone ring, and had scaled the business significantly, and were looking for a partner to kind of take things to the next level. So those two things worked out. That gave us a basis in those two verticals. Since then, we've been building around that. So we bought Gravity to kind of complement Homesick in the home and gifting space. And then we bought Love Your Melon to complement Kalo in the outdoor category.
So, I mean, a lot of our listeners, I'm sure, have watched Shark Tank, right? Um, Tell me how Shark Tank is is not really true to what you're involved with.
That's a great question. I think Shark Tank is a great show. First of all, I think giving a platform for entrepreneurs to get their products out there is fantastic. And we've actually looked at several companies that have been on Shark Tank, and you definitely see a lift as far as traffic and sales in and around the area. I think where it falls flat is, the idea of the deal structure and kind of how those things end up coming in, and then where they end up. For us, we try to partner with these entrepreneurs on a fundamental level. Do we believe in them as humans? Do we believe in the brand holistically? And then can we add value? And I think Shark Tank presents a little bit more like a traditional VC meeting, where you have the VCs pitching everything they can do for you, but they're not involved in your business operationally. So, some I'm sure outperform on those expectations, and others underperform. But for us, it's really about a holistic alignment and operational partnership.
Between the first acquisition you did and now the third acquisition you've done? What did you learn? What did you learn about? Well, yeah, that's a good question. So, what did you learn?
We've learned a ton. I mean, listen, Homesick, when we bought it, it came to us with 0 employees. As a carve out of BuzzFeed, Kalo came to us with dozens of employees, um, different categories, different industries. Would this shared operating system and shared team actually work across multiple brands? At the end of the day, what we're doing is one big experiment, right? It really hasn't been done this way before. So we've learned a lot. I think the team, as far as the talent level on the team, has risen dramatically over the last 3 and 4 years. So we're super excited and happy about our team today. As this scales up, look, we're in 2 verticals today. We're in home and gifting and sport and outdoor as 1 and 2. We plan to be in a third this year and then a fourth. And this model really works, for a dozen verticals with dozens of brands feeding into it. So, obviously I'm biased here, but I believe this is the future of what we call D2C e-commerce, done in a truly omni-channel way.
So the ultimate goal, yes, every goal for every business is to sell, right? So the advantage that they would have with Win is they could scale, they could focus on what they do well and they like to do. That's number one. Number two is they can scale faster. Those, but when they go to sell, they're going to have to give a larger percentage, the owner, back to Win. But if you scale bigger, you'll be more valuable to somebody else, as we said in the beginning, as I said in the beginning about the 10 million. Now 10 million wouldn't be that mark for you guys, but is that accurate to say that's the formula?
It is. I think if one of the first conversations that comes up with these entrepreneurs and founders that we meet is, who are the 10 people that you wish you could hire today that you just haven't had the resources to hire? Because these are a lot of bootstrap businesses. And, it's a head of Amazon, haven't focused enough on Amazon, or 3PL shipping's been a nightmare, or demand planning, we always have too much inventory. We say, look, understood and agreed, we've had that same experience. We have this team. Here's what that looks like. Here's what that looks like within your business. Then we scale the revenue forward collectively and say, look, if you're a $20 million business today, here's how we feel like you can grow 20% over the next 5 years with us. And the transactions that we do, you're exactly right, we end up doing majority transactions up front. So, we will buy a 70, 80, 90% stake in the business up front. And the founders then roll the rest of that with us. And we continue to scale that business with them as partners. So effectively, they get a second bite at the apple. But I can tell you from my personal experience, my first exit of any tangible size was when we sold the agency, BVA Commerce. And it was a significant exit for myself and for my family. So I think the ability to take some chips off the table and have a win is very meaningful for these founders. And then having a partner who's going to step forward and continue to build the business in the way that you'd wanted it to for legacy purposes is also very important. I've also seen founders who sold to groups that don't really have the same outlook. And sometimes those businesses, when you look 5 years out, they're not the same business. And for us, we really plan to continue to scale this platform. This is an evergreen strategy, taking these e-commerce focused businesses and continuing to scale them on an omni-channel basis is not going away anytime soon. So, our biggest value add is both allowing the founders to take some capital off the table up front, but continue to scale the business just like they would have wanted to if they had the team themselves.
I was asked to come in as a adjunct professor at a college just to fill in for one day and to lecture on entrepreneurship. And I said to the kids, there's 25 kids in the class, and I said, raise your hand. I knew the answer was going to be this way, but raise your hand if your business plan calls for angel funding or venture capital. And 25 hands went up. right? Like kids, I've never taken any money from investors, so it's all been self-funded. And I started my first business with $9,000, so 27 years ago. Okay, kids are not taught nowadays that they can, based on the business idea, self-fund.
Sure.
Can you self-fund a consumer products business past any sizable level?
I think you can. Well, first of all, congrats that you've been able to do that with three businesses on your
Seven,
own.
seven
Seven,
businesses.
sorry,
Yeah,
seven businesses.
yeah. I was just a side note. I say six in the intro, and like I've been doing this podcast for 4 years, and like a month ago, I was like, "Is it really six?" And I added, I'm like, "No, it's seven," but I never changed it. But go ahead.
It's incredible. I always have the most respect for entrepreneurs in general that are able to do that. And the answer is yes, you can do it. It's very difficult. Well, take an example that I used earlier, the MVMT watches, Jake and Kramer, they never raised a dollar. That was, all literally they did a, crowdfunded campaign that helped them kind of get started. But generally speaking, it was a product that worked. They took those profits, they reinvested back in the business. It's certainly not an easy path, but I would say, 75% plus of the businesses that we're seeing today are still self-funded businesses. It's entrepreneurs who
Wow.
did not have a network or not kind of, tied into VC or PE. They got out there, they kind of, made $1 equal five as you need to in those early days. And they built a nice business, and they're kind of now getting to the point where they want to decide, how do we take things to the next level? But you can do it. I think it takes really efficient marketing, which has gotten tougher in the last several years. I think it was easier 5 or 6 years ago to market on Facebook with a good product and have that be an efficient, marketing spend. Much different today than it was then. But you can. We still see it a lot.
All right, so I'm going to do something different here. I don't know if my mind is going to work quick enough. I'm going to do some rapid fire questions that are just they're on my mind. So we'll see if I usually can think of three fast ones, but I've never done this before. How many hours a week do you put into your job now?
You'd have to ask my wife that question. I would say, listen, I've always been a little bit of an overworker, for better or for worse. I think part of that was when I worked for that family office, we were just on all the time. So it was busy, busy, busy. So I would say for me, an average week is an 80-hour week. I say that with the context that I really enjoy what I'm doing. And anytime that I'm spending with these founders and scaling these businesses, I really enjoy. So I don't look at it as kind of work-life balance. It's all the same thing. But there's definitely a lot of hours that go into it.
How have you changed the way you are now than when you first started your career?
Listen, I think everything literally in life is perspective. And I just have so much more perspective now than when I started. I had an ambition. I knew I was going to go out and, try to scale some businesses. I didn't really know what that meant. I had my first startup that was called Postgrad Apartments, that we were doing leads for real estate and effectively selling them to brokerage firms of folks coming out of university and headed into cities. Then did the agency. The agency was a more significant startup that we scaled, to 100 plus employees, and now Win. And now that I have the perspective that I do, having gone through that journey, when I sit down with founders, I just try to be as honest and direct as I can about their path. And because I see them, in some cases, me 10 years ago, right? And they're go, 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 and they're ambitious. So that's really, for me, now that I've gone through the battles, I see it a little bit more clearly. And I also see how many more battles I have ahead, right? Win is where it is. We're going to continue to scale. But I think perspective is really everything. And that's how I've grown as far as where I sit now.
What are you not good at? Like, that's not a God-given gift, so to speak. You're like, I'm just not really good at this. What is it? And you can pick one.
I like to say our shared team, there's 14 leads. They're all much better at what they do than I'll ever be. Um, I would say getting into things that are very, focused data, things like demand planning when you're looking at Excel spreadsheets, even though, by the way, that's where I started my career, so I should be better at it. I'm really not good. My attention to detail and my focus is not there anymore, so I'm not great there.
And what are you great at? What is a natural skill? You just have it.
Honestly, I think, and again, this comes out of experience as well as maybe naturally, but picking brands that really matter. I worked for a guy for 7 years who had started a couple $1 billion businesses and had really good instinct. And I think working so closely with him for so long, you built up that muscle memory of, does this brand really have the it factor, and can it continue to have that over the next decade? So that's really what I focus most of my time on, is making sure that the brands that we're investing our time and resources in are going to be around for the longer term.
Do you find that instinct um, can cloud your judgment when you do it, getting involved deeper and deeper into a deal? Your initial reaction is like, "Oh, this is a home run. This is really great." And so then you carry that same intuition throughout the due diligence process, and then it gets harder and harder for you to pull out of it because you had that intuition to begin with. Have you found that?
That's a great question. I think we're also very disciplined from a platform perspective, and we try to set those boundaries up front with the founders. And we say, look, if you were to run a deal process today, it's very possible that you may find a partner that's going to pay more than we will, let's say, right? And we're clear about that up front, but we set the expectation of exactly what we can do, how different our model is, and how we can scale the business operationally as their partners. So we haven't had any experiences where we've gotten to kind of the finish line and there's been, a retrade or an issue that we've had to manage through. It's been pretty clear expectation setting up front.
What are you reading now? And I know, of course, you're listening to the Entrepreneur MBA podcast. So, but what are you reading now or listening to now that you think other entrepreneurs should take a look at?
One of my favorite books of all time is called Power versus Force. And
Oh,
I think it's such a profound book in the sense that you kind of know it instinctually if you're trying to force something versus going with the power of where things feel like they should be going, right? And I think that also holds true to, these businesses and these processes. If it feels like the right time to partner with someone like us, it probably is. And if it doesn't, it probably isn't, right? And I think you have to let your gut guide you on that. But I think that's something. I just read a book. I was on a plane last night. I read a book called "The Shortness of Life" by Seneca, and kind of gets you back to, this is more of a philosophical, stoic mentality, but spending your time wisely, right? And these folks that are running these businesses, do you enjoy passionately what you're doing or not? And hopefully you do, but really focusing your time there. As far as what I'm listening to, I listen to a tremendous amount of podcasts. Listen to some of your work leading up to this, which I enjoyed. I'm a big fan of the Tim Ferrisses of the world. Really digging in on kind of interesting biohacking. I do a daily sauna, cold plunge. I get a little bit down the rabbit hole on that, which helps us is also in business. In a brand such as Gravity that we own. We're pushing deeper into the health and wellness space. So doing some of that, DD myself personally, I guess.
hmm. If How does your wife feel about the time that you spend with the family versus the business?
I was worried where you were taking that question, Stephen, but
Well, I heard you yell at her this morning because the dog was barking. So, no, I'm kidding, of course. But
yeah, we almost had a dog audio issue there that my
yeah,
wife luckily managed for us. So
And it's not a personal question, to be honest with you. I think the podcast. I actually run two podcasts. One's called the Nonprofit MBA podcast, and the other one's the Entrepreneur MBA podcast. And um, the guy I had for no, it was for the Entrepreneur MBA podcast. He was more about. We were talking a lot about how, which I know, how your a business can just take over your life. We all know that if you're in business, right? So I was just curious to know if that's happened to you, or what would your wife say about it?
I think she works a more traditional, 9 to 5. So I think the balance of our two work lives is helpful. We have two young kids. We have two kids now, two boys under 3. But no, she's been super supportive. I think, the excitement I feel for the entrepreneurial journey, she feels as well, and kind of, joins in with me on. So, obviously there's time that you want to take off and unplug. And I do try to do that a couple times a year. But as I said, listen, if you enjoy what you're doing, which I truly do, um, I can be on a call on a Saturday, closing a deal, and then turn around and be there for the family and have a birthday party for my 3-year-old, right? So it's all one and the same, and she's bought in and along on that journey with me. So I obviously love and respect and appreciate her for supporting me in that way.
If you had a vision as far as where you can see yourself moving forward, I don't mean a short term, long term vision. Do you see yourself completely retiring at some point from all businesses? Where do you see yourself in the long term?
It sounds like a question my wife might ask, Stephen, but
Smart wife.
listen, I think what we're building at Win is special, and I think this is really a platform for the very long term. And what I mean by that is, now that we've done the hard work of building the operating system and the team, and now that we're going out and having conversations with these brands, these founders become friends of mine, and the idea of bringing them in and being able to help them continue to scale that business, that is not something that I'm looking to get away from in the short, medium, long term. I think this model continues to scale. I've said it on my side, and obviously I'm biased, but I do think this is the model that makes sense in this space, frankly. And then separately, I have different, organizations, things that I'm a part of. I joined YPO this past year, so I'm part of YPO Metro New York.
I know it well. Yeah.
Joined the membership committee there, so try to be very involved. That's also, entrepreneurs that are scaling businesses. So I think as long as you round out your lifestyle and have enough support from all sides, it starts to look a lot more sustainable. And then you don't really have that view of that harsh, retirement and focus.
Yeah, just so our listeners know, I've mentioned the EO, which I belong to for 20 years. It's a little caveat on that. My forum group that you're put into in the EO group's been together for over 20 years. I think I belong to EO for like 7 or 8 years. But the two organizations that we just talked about, EO, Entrepreneur Organization, is for owners that own 100% or at least 51% of their companies. And it's great. It's really great. It's 15,000 members throughout the world. I would highly recommend it. It's really an amazing support group that will help you not just in your business, but in your personal life. YPO is called Young Presidents Club, which is kind of a misnomer. It is for, you have to own, is it 25% of the business?
So less about ownership.
It's 10 million in size, right?
So each chapter is different. There's international, and then there's chapter by chapter. So YPO Metro New York is actually the first and the largest chapter. So our requirements are a little bit different than international, but generally CEO, president of an organization of a certain size. Size includes employees, includes revenue, includes valuation. So, but to your point, tremendous network. You join a forum. These are 8 or so folks who are become your best friends, as I'm sure if you've been in for 20 years.
Yep, they have. They are.
And then additionally, kind of to your point about the wife and the family, lots of activities that are family focused. And my wife is actually in a spouse forum as well. So
Yep.
in with other spouses of entrepreneurs. And it's been just tremendous for us.
Yeah, I think, I'm a big believer in taking some of the risk off the table. I really believe that organizations that join either EO or YPO have a higher chance of being successful. And I'll tell you the thing that's been fascinating in my group. I think we have 9 guys in my group, and the majority of them have all been with us together for over 20 years. It's been fascinating to see people's careers, how maybe they sell a business or they close down a business, and how you're constantly reinventing yourselves. And we don't talk about business anymore. I mean, we're all super experienced business owners. We don't talk about business at all. Now we just talk about family, and kids and retirement and what that looks like, so to speak, and health issues, and it's just really amazing, the things you learn. But I really believe that you become so much better at running your business because you have this shared support network. I'm sure you feel the same way.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing that's really popped out of it for me is you see businesses that are in very different industries. Let's take in my forum, um, a guy who runs a business that happens to also be a holding company, kind of M&A focused, very different space. But the parallels that you can draw from that and the scale difference, that's a several billion-dollar business that we're still aspiring to be. But yeah, it's been tremendous, and both on the family side and just on the professional side, really, really a great addition to kind of my life and my purpose.
Yeah, just recognize the name John Simon at all? He used to belong to YPO. He was in our farm group, and then he moved on to YPO because he wanted a bigger size companies that he's working with. They recognize real estate. Yeah,
I don't think I have.
R- r-
Is that I know Simon from a real estate?
properties, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's not him. Yeah, it's he is you know, pretty big time in New York real estate. Owns a huge hotel, boutique hotel that he built and stuff. It's wild business, the real estate market in New York. Like he owns like 1% of the business. It's like kind of scale is completely different. But yeah, it's a good guy. A last question, it's not an interesting question, I think, but what do you hate doing in your business?
It's a great question. I think for us, the challenge is being great at all areas of revenue, right? So Shopify is really my background. I've spent the better part of the last, decade plus focused on Shopify. We were around when they were very early. Amazon has been a new learning for me, and we have some experts that we've brought in that are very focused on that. And then retail, as far as these large retail accounts. So I think the hardest thing to do with the time constraints that we all have is just to continue to be an expert in all these areas, right? So when you say what's your least favorite thing, I think that's the most challenging thing to do, is just to make sure you stay ahead of it. But luckily for us, we have these folks who that's their number one focus. So if that's my biggest challenge, is keeping up with them, then I'll take it.
Good for you. All right. Well, it was a great conversation, a little different than what I usually do. And I learned a lot. Kyle, you're kind of in a different space than I've been, but I see where you're going on it. I just can't see how you'll be, uh, how it won't work. It's going to be a good thing. You're going to learn. I think you're going to learn a lot as you go along, which will really, honestly, I'm a little bit surprised that you're not a little bit more industry focused. That's the only thing. Now, maybe the smaller deals, you have to be a little bit more wider in your scope to kind of get those deals in play. But I would think that that's just, I don't know it. I don't know much. My first reaction is that uh, is there any validity in that?
Well, I think for us, the focus is any consumer product business between, let's say, 5 and 50 million.
Yeah.
That's a good partnership conversation for us to have. The two verticals we're in today are home and gifting and
Yep.
sport and outdoor. So we continue to compound and grow in those, but we're looking at getting into a third and a fourth vertical. And
Gotcha.
the good news is, Stephen, the platform is built to be vertical agnostic.
Yeah.
So any business in any product category can benefit from having this shared team.
Yeah, so keep in mind, I think there is some parallel. So listen, the first company I started was a digital printing company. The second company I started was placed technology consultants in major Fortune 500 company. Third business was we placed registered nurses at hospitals throughout the United States on long-term temporary assignments. The next business I started was a software as a service business for credentialing. The next business was corporate real estate, where we own, no, it sounds more prestigious, but 10,000 square foot commercial building. The next is when I started with my partner, Financing Solutions, which provides lines of credit to small businesses. And then the next business we do is we buy life insurance policies when people pass away, so that people can get money up front instead of having to wait. There's, and what do you know? What do I know about all this stuff? They all have accounts receivable. They all have accounts payable. They all have some more employees than others. Running a business is running a business, no matter if you're placing nurses or doing financing. Yeah, it's really kind of the same thing. And I think that's what you're talking about as well. They all have, shipping issues. They all have, accounting issues, right? It's kind of the same thing.
That's exactly right. There's areas of our shared team that can solve problems for all these businesses. And then there are synergies, some that are closer together. We can start to market more closely together as part of the Win family. Others that are further apart, that's more challenging. But there's a lot of synergies and overlays there that we can start to compound over time.
Good for you. Well, I'd like to thank so very much Kyle Widrick from Win Brands Group for coming on to today's podcast. If you like today's podcast, please feel free to share it with a friend, and also give us a review too. Our reviews, I just happened to look at it recently. I never looked at it, and they're all 5 stars, and that's kind of nice. And I love doing them. That's why I do it. And I also consider subscribing on your favorite podcasting app. And of course, if you're looking for a line of credit for your business, you can call us at 862-207-4118 or visit our website at fscreditline.com. That's FS as in Financing Solutions Creditline.com. Kyle, if people want to get in touch with you, how would they go about doing that?
Stephen, thank you. Email's best, Kyle, Kyle, at winbg.com, Kyle at winbg.com.
And it's Kyle. So, and if our listeners have any interest in getting any new business ideas, I tweet daily, well, not really daily anymore, every once in a while, about lessons for business owners at S Halasnick, which is my name, Halasnik. And, I think the takeaway that I kind of got today that we could all kind of look at is, you want to stop thinking like a small business owner, and you kind of want to say, how can I, get some scale in this? How can I get out of this day-to-day grind that I'm in and get above the fray? And, I think Kyle really showed us how he kind of did that. Really, yeah, he's kind of working on his strategic stuff. And I think my guess is 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, Kyle's going to be working on things that I think he really, really loves, which is more of the strategic end and the relationships, and the other stuff he'll be able to backfill with other people. So, it was a great conversation. Listen, the weather's changing. I think the COVID thing is going to be behind us this summer. Everybody try to get outside. There's so much value in getting outside and being with nature, and just really, regrouping a little bit. Go for a walk and go do something for yourself. That's what you need to do as an entrepreneur. Take care of yourself first. Everybody have a great day.